meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so everyone's heard that now, I think. If everyone's okay, we're gonna kick off. So firstly, I just wanted to say welcome. My name is Susanna and I work for the charity Doctors in Distress. It's great to see you all at our webinar this evening. And we're really grateful to Simon and Graham who are here today from the Wesleyan Foundation, who are gonna run you through some top tips and advice on how to stay financially fit at this stage in your career and the benefits that that's going to bring you long term. As I mentioned, chat box is open. This is a session for you. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask them. And I'm sure Simon and Graham will be able to give you some great answers to those questions. So I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to explain quickly what we do at Doctors in Distress and why we're running this for you today. So as you all know far too well, being a doctor comes with a lot of stress. And I know over the past couple of years that's been particularly evident and even more so for you as foundation doctors so early on in your careers. And as a result, I'm sure this isn't new to you, there are many doctors that are suffering from burnout and moral injury. But what we do know is that support for doctors in this situation is often limited and not accessed for fear of repercussions on their role. So at Doctors in Distress, what we want to do is provide that support from you in an independent space. So you may have heard of Balint groups or Schwartz rounds. What we do is very similar to that, but we're in a totally independent and confidential setting outside of your workspace. So we provide spaces such as these for you to come together, to engage in activities, to talk with each other and to share about the pressures of your job and to relieve those pressures. So as you'll see on the screen, we've just popped up a contact card for us. So please do stay in contact with us, follow us on social media, you'll find out more about what we do. And even if you felt inclined to fundraise for us, we'd be very, very grateful. We're a charity and always welcome support in that way. You may feel that anything I've said right now isn't relevant to you and that you're doing really well at the moment, and that's great and that's really good to hear, but I can guarantee that there will be colleagues that you work with that maybe are finding things a bit more difficult. So even if it's for them, I just encourage you to take a look at what we are doing. So do feel free to email me, and without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Graham and Simon. Over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Susanna. Just a quick, by way of introduction, my name's Simon Appleyard. I work within the advice business within Wesleyan Financial Services, and I've been looking after the financial needs of medics for about 13 years. I've been here now, and we get to see people throughout the different stages of their career. And obviously, therefore, some of the stresses and strains that go on, and hopefully, working with Doctors in Distress, we can help put a little bit back in terms of supporting you guys.
And yeah, my name's Graham Leyfield. I've worked alongside Simon for the entire time Simon's been here. I've been working for Wesleyan Financial Services now for my 17th year, and I've worked exclusively within the GP segment within Wesleyan. And that's a team of people that look after exclusively the needs of GPs. And as we'll explain in a minute, we've got GPs, hospital doctors, dentists, and teachers, the professions we look after. So I've had the pleasure of working with GPs and GP practices across that 17 years. And hopefully we'll be able to share some of the experiences we've had and thoughts as we go through today.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Graham. So who are we? So what gives us the right to be sat here talking about the things that are going to impact on you guys? So we're a mutual organisation, so we don't have shareholders. We're owned by our policy holders, if you like. We've been doing this for about 180 years. And what we have, we provide financial advice, and we're specialists. As Graham's alluded to there, we look after niche areas because each of you, not only are you unique individuals, but you work in very specific circumstances with different benefits and support around you. So we have a really good insight as far as that's concerned. And on top of that, we actually have an advisory board and a junior advisory board where we get senior people from within your profession to come and tell us what's going on. So that's been invaluable, particularly over the last couple of years with the pandemic, to really understand not just what's happening, what's in the news, but actually on the ground, how we can support and help you guys. And one of the things I'm most proud of is the Wesleyan Foundation, and we've given out over £1 million in recent years to charitable organisations, and it is giving something back, which is part of being a mutual, but also to be engaged with an organisation like Doctors in Distress, really important to us. And I hope we can continue to provide not just donation support, but also this kind of support on an ongoing basis. So that's us. So what are we going to cover tonight, Graham?
So firstly, I just want to endorse what Simon just said about the foundation. I think it's a hugely important part, and I'm delighted to be working alongside Doctors in Distress and the other charities that we support. And what we're going to cover tonight. So first thing that I want to say about that is that Simon and I are doing this. We've chosen to do this fairly unscripted, so that'll probably be apparent as you're watching. We've obviously got a structure and some questions there, but we didn't want this to be an overly technical session. We didn't want to come across as a lecturing. We wanted it to try and come across as a discussion. So hopefully that will make it a more enjoyable and engaging watch. But please do ask questions as we go along, use the chat facility and take part in the polls. So really simple questions. Why is financial health important? And you may think that's obvious. We'll just think on that, but then actually turn it into something more specific. So what specifically, particularly for medics and early career medics, are some of the challenges and things that you may need to be considering? What are the steps you can actually then take to minimize any sort of financial uncertainty? And trust me, tell you straight up front, there's plenty that you can do, and we'll touch on some of those. And then we thought we'd just look, between us, there's 30 years of experience of working with medicals in financial services. 17 and 13, I just added up, was 30. So I thought that was just... Yeah, absolutely. And we'll just do some of our top tips, and we put some thought on what are the things we would, if you took a few things away, what would they be? So that's what we're trying to do that. And then I hope we'll have a chance to answer some of your questions. One thing on the questions that would say is, we'll answer what we can on a call here. Sometimes we get questions which are very specific. If we need to do, then you might need to take those offline, but generic questions we'll ask. And we're going to start by one of a couple of short polls that we'd like to participate in, and you can click on the screen. And so if I could just ask if you could consider, the first question there, have you ever sought specialist financial advice? Just a yes or no. If we could take a few seconds just to ask that. So, Susanna, do we have any results for that?
We do, and actually everyone's been very diligent and launched the second and answered the second one as well. So I'll make note of those answers. To the first one, one person has, and 5 people haven't. Okay,
that would make the group. There's a reason that we've asked that question, and that's really just we wanted to flag right up front that there is help out there, and there is specialist help for medics. So for people who are at the stage of your career, whether you're choosing to go down the route of working in hospitals or in general practice, or need to know what happens now at the latter stages of your training and so on, there is help out there for you, and it's specialist around the knowledge of your circumstances. So that's what we wanted to do right up front, is to say, look, if you've never thought about that, you may have done that because you've never realized that there was specialist help available. So the reason we asked that question was to make that abundantly clear. I hope that help is out there for you, which brings us on to why that help we think is important, which is the next question, which is, why do we think financial health is important? And Simon will probably just prompt it over to you to do your thoughts first on that.
I think, at one level it's self-evident in terms of managing your money, looking after your money is a good thing. But here's the thing. One of the first comments that was made to me when I joined, and was the first time I'm going to be looking after medical professionals, I was told, what you've got to understand is medics are time poor. And your immediate reaction was, well, we've all got 24 hours in the day. But the reality is it's how you allocate your time to the different challenges that you've got and you face. And what it boils down to is you guys are super busy. Super busy. You know this over the last 2 years as well as your studies. There's been all the stuff, the pandemic's going on, and generally speaking, it is one of a profession, be it in hospital service, be it in GP land, where time it flies by. It's having that, therefore, that time to stay on top of things like money. I think that's something that is something that'll get tucked down the order of priority for you. And the trouble with that is that if you're not financially healthy, you can get money worries, and money worries are unnecessary in terms of the things you can do about it. But it's just stress. So I guess a general sort of question is how good are you at managing your money right now? It's going to become challenging in terms of the opportunities you're going to have to earn money and some of the liabilities that you'll face. What do you think, Brent?
I mean, for me, there's enough things. I mean, we were talking with a bunch of young doctors who, as you say, incredibly busy, going through a very, very challenging part of your career with all the things happening about where's my career going, where am I going to be working, what do I specialize in, all of those things. And that will carry on. We will always have time pressures as you're going on. And things go wrong. Things go wrong in our lives, whether that's on our personal life, our health, and the outside world. Things go wrong. And the last thing you need when something goes wrong is for money to be a problem which compounds that challenge. And whilst being financially healthy doesn't mean you won't, it will solve any sort of mental well-being. What you don't want is for money to compound any mental challenges, mental health challenges that you may face. And I think, Simon, we know from the Wesleyan's experience, mental health related issues is one of the biggest source of claims that we get through income protection and other types of policies. And so I think the reason we would say this is so important is it gives you that level of peace of mind and stops you worrying, because you don't actually have to have things to go wrong for you to worry about money. So understanding where your money is creates that peace of mind and will help. And actually it's to try and make things it's trying to keep the lid on things whilst it's all going well, and for it not to get worse if things do go awry for you. That was really much how I would sum it up.
I think that's a really good shout, and yeah, it's a third. One of the things that we provide as part of our proposition are insurances that can cover you if you're ill. So that's our income protection, and we pay commonly £2 million plus a year to our policy holders, and a third of that money goes on mental health issues. So it's a real thing. And a real concern. But all right, let's drill down a little bit with that. Let's move on to that then. So go on. What other more specific considerations do you think are important to think about?
So, as I mentioned, my background with Wesleyan has been exclusively in the GP side of things. So my apologies to those watching if I'm a little bit sort of GP orientated in the response, but I use that. And Simon, I know you work and some of the team you manage work in the hospital, so maybe you cover that side of things. But think about things that are coming up in the relatively near future. That sort of decisions on career paths and where you're going and what you're going to do. So let's take the example example of somebody who's going to choose general practice. Where are you going to go straight away? Are you going to go down the route of locuming? Are you going to look for a salaried role? Are you going to try a bit of hybrid working, maybe do a bit of online? What are your career choices? Those will be very specific to yourself, but each one of those has a different income challenge. And a really, really simple example. Imagine that one of the things you want to do when you over the next few years is buy your first home. And you want to go down the general practice route, and you think the best way that you're going to go for that is to spend a couple of years working as a locum GP. Love to get experience working in a number of different practices, and hopefully I'll find one there that becomes a practice I want to work in long term. Brilliant. That has been historically how an awful lot of GPs have started out. But you move from working as a junior doctor under the realm to the NHS overnight into being a self-employed person. How does that affect your ability to get a mortgage? Because you've suddenly got no income history. And the answer comes back to what we've already said. There are things you can do, and there are products and providers that will understand your work. And that's why specialist advice can really help you, because otherwise you'll go down to your bank, where most people will start the first conversation about a mortgage, and they'll say, where's your income history? You need 3 years of proof of income, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a really just a simple, practical bit there. You've got things like, over the next few years, many of the young doctors that we're talking to will be thinking starting a family. How does that affect your income? What will that mean in terms of maternity, paternity, the cost of having children, moving ahead into what do we want our future for those children to look like? So there's just a couple of immediate and practical examples. What about yourself? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll take on the mortgage one. I think that's, and certainly with locums, it's not just the lack of potential evidence of earnings, but accountants will be very keen to say, oh, have you thought about going down the limited company route? And that's great, but from actually, the whole point of that is to minimise the visible amount of income. So again, unintended consequences. And I think that's one of the things to think about. But yeah, again, from a hospital perspective, it's about you know, the specialism you take. It's about therefore beyond that is, and this idea of being busy. It is feeding into, well, what does your lifestyle look like? You know, you might well be going, do you know what, when I'm not at work, if ever, but when I'm not at work, I want to make the most of my lifestyle. So how do I do that and yet balance things like having a mortgage and maintaining a mortgage, and as you touched on there, kids? Well, they're just expensive, whichever way you look at it. They are just hugely expensive. And you know, with where you're at in your career, you might go, whoa, hang on a second, that's a way down the track yet. Let's not worry about the kids. But here's the thing: is that with a lot of the things that are in front of you right now, or are down the track, if you wait until these things happen to do something about them, it's a lot more expensive and a lot more stressful for you to actually do that. So, you know, one of the other big things, which is things like the pension scheme. But I know you've got some thoughts on that. But if you look at, like, well, why as a 20-something-year-old would I be thinking about retirement? Well, I guess you probably do have an idea about retirement. And let me give you an example of that. I was chatting to people at the RCGP conference, and sort of talking about, well, what do you see? And talking to some recent graduates who were really going F1, but thinking about maybe going down the GP side, and say, well, we've no idea when to retire, no idea. And I say, well, okay, are you happy to work till 69, 70 then? No, definitely don't want to work till then. Right, so you have an idea of when you don't want to be working. So let's just extrapolate that back. So you'll have some parameters. The same with kids. Even if you don't have them now, you've probably got an idea of whether you want them or not. Some people are sensible enough not to. Good for you, because they're just expensive. And they're lovely, just in case they're listening. But the point is that you've probably got an idea about that. In the same way as if I asked, you've probably got an idea of how you want them educated. Some of you will be like, state school's just fine. Some will say, I really want private education. These things cost money. Okay. And if you think about that and you look at saying, well, let me start doing something about it sooner rather than later, then great. And I know what you're now thinking. You're now thinking, hang on a minute, I've got all this student debt hanging around me at the minute. I can't, how on earth can I think about anything else in the future? The great thing about the student debt is, and if you listen to Martin Lewis, he goes on about this a lot. The great thing about it is you don't have to pay it unless you can afford it. And even then, it's phased in so that it isn't an issue for you. So don't be overly worried about the fact that you. I know some of you will walk around with a badge going, I've got 60,000 in debt here. Yeah, it will look after itself. And if you're in a position where you can't afford it because you're not earning, because you're not working, you won't have to pay it. So that's less of a stress there. But managing debt generally is something that can be very stressful. And making sure that you are putting yourself ahead of the curve so you don't have to get into debt from this stage on. That's a really, really important thing to do. But in terms of the pension scheme, then go on, Graham. What are your thoughts on that?
I think this is one of the great challenges of talking with having similar conversations with my son who's in his 20s and about pension planning. And in a nutshell, the retirement seems an absolute 2 lifetimes away. If you're in your early 20s now, it seems like something that I don't have to worry about that. I'll think about that another day. I'll park that and I've got this mortgage. I've got to get my career started and might have all these things we've been talking about. And it's really, really easy to park the pension stuff. And I've heard that the pension's not what it used to be, etc., etc. Look, everybody's situation is different. And you can't make a blanket statement that applies to everybody. But I would just say, look, don't discount the NHS pension scheme. It is still one of the best pension schemes that is available. I promise you, Simon and I and the people we work with would swap our company pension scheme for the NHS pension scheme at the drop of a hat, because it's not just the retirement stuff that it gives you. It's understanding the life cover, the ill health retirement benefits, etc., etc., the dependence benefits that it gives you and your family outside of just the retirement. So I think just one of those things that it's a real challenge when you're faced with thinking, actually, I need to maximize the money I've got in my pocket now. It's very, very easy to park that. So that's a conversation there, and that's just one of the things I would talk about there. You can see I'm fairly passionate. You'll probably gathered the where my tendency would be to fall in that, because I know that it's the decisions that you make in your 20s that will affect your options in your 50s, 60s, and potentially give you the chances, as Simon's alluded to already, about not having to work to 70 if you don't want to. Trust me, that's possible. It's what you do in the next few years that will enable that to do that. So, Simon, I think we've got another poll, actually. Suzanne, if you...
There's just one more point I wanted to make, which I think is really, really important on the things to consider. And that is that, you guys are embarking on a long career, if so you choose. And within that, the potential to have portfolio careers, make different choices are fantastic. Also within that, and I think really important when you're looking at your own mental health and the general health, the ability to take time out, I think, is something you really need to think about. And be it, a sabbatical where you're going and doing some charitable work overseas, or just taking time out, just literally making time out, making that part of what you do, what you plan to do, I think is incredibly healthy. And we regularly see clients that do that and have that time out, who they always seem to be the ones that are more with it, have a better perspective on life, and dare I say, happier. There is a classic one which I know Graham knows about. There was a couple who locumed, and yeah, they had a simple plan, which was we'll locum, we'll max it out for 3 to 6 months at a time, and then we'll go and travel for 3 to 6 months to a time, and then they'll come back and they'll do the same and on repeat until they decided that what they wanted to do further on. And they were an incredibly happy bunch. And one of the reasons is because they have done some planning in terms of, you know, what ifs and making sure that's taken care of. But yeah, so making sure that you do have time off the treadmill, be it once every 5 or 10 years, whatever works for you. But doing that, I think, is really important. But sorry, yeah. So I think, is it another poll next?
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, I'll relaunch because a few new people have joined. So you might have to go through the first one again, but if you could answer the second one, that would be great. Okay, answers are coming in. Just give it a few more. There's still a few people who haven't joined. Okay, so 40% are saying yes, and 60% are saying no.
That's really interesting. Do you know what, we've anticipated somewhere around that sort of half and half, and understand the NHS sick pay. We didn't ask that because we want to now do a slide or a talk about the NHS sick pay. The reason we wanted to actually ask that question is it brings up the importance of having the foundations of your planning in place. All of your financial plans will be built on strong foundations, of which protecting your income is going to be fundamental to that. And having a strategy to do that is important. And the first part of that is your NHS sick pay. So in a nutshell, the NHS sick pay will build up to 6 months full pay, 6 months half pay after 5 years of service. But those of you who are thinking about going down a general practice route will not be part of the NHS when you choose to work for a practice, or you go down a locuming career. So a locum is an entirely self-employed person. If you don't work, you don't get any income. If you go to a salaried role, you're no longer in the NHS. Your sick pay is based upon the contract of employment you negotiate with your practice. So it's really important that you understand that. Those of you who continue to work a career within hospitals and working towards consultancy and so on, will stay within the NHS sick pay. But it's really important that you understand that basic part. Thank you. So yeah, understand the importance of the sick pay, really there. And that's the first step along what we can do along the next question, which is about what can you do to minimise financial uncertainty. And I'm just going to make the first point there, which is to have a plan. But I know, Simon, you've always got a view on having a plan isn't enough, is it?
So, well, this is the thing, all right, and this is the takeaway for you guys, I guess, is you need 2 plans, all right. It's as simple as that. You need a plan A and a plan B, and what I mean by that is that it's much easier to think of the plan B stuff. So we've touched on it there. If you're ill or if you die, what happens then? All right. So, you know, even with you know, for those who stay within hospital service, you've got 6 months full, 6 months half pay for the rest of your career. Brilliant. Clearly, if you go off and do private work once you're a consultant, or you're doing portfolio stuff around working in the education field, doing research privately, you won't necessarily have that. So be aware of that. But that's a great starting point. But here's my question. What if you're ill for longer than that? Okay. what happens then when you've got a mortgage, you've got kids in education, you know, you've got still goals you want to do? What happens then? Now, you might have a really great plan already for that, but that's the sort of thing. So plan B, really, really important that you've got that in place, because that is your bedrock. But don't lose sight of having a plan A. And plan A is right, how do I manage my money? How do I keep the tabs on my money to make sure that all this hard work I'm doing results in achieving all the things you want to achieve in life? And that does range from ultimately, well, retiring when you want to retire and having the lifestyle you want in retirement, to being able to take your kids on holiday where you want to take them on holiday. And some of you will be quite happy going camping in Rhyl for 2 weeks in August. Some of you will want to travel the world. Each their own. And that's the other bit, is whatever your plan A is, or plan B, it's got to be unique to you. And I think you owe it to yourselves to actually invest in yourselves, invest a bit of time in actually sitting down and starting this planning process by going, well, what do I want to do? And I know you're really busy right now, but having that time, as Graham said, the stuff you think about now is much more valuable to you in the long run. I'll give you an example. So here you are right now. Great, you want to you get a house, you want to maintain a mortgage, fantastic. You want to get that paid off as early as possible. You may not. There are good arguments either way. It's a debate to be had. But you get to your, late 40s, early 50s, you're trying really hard to pay that mortgage off. And so that's a big outgoing. So you're paying extra on your mortgage, try and get rid of it. You've got 2 or 3 kids in private education. So hang on a minute, where's that coming from? Well, that's coming out of your income as well. Does that feel like stress to you? It does, doesn't it? It's an awful lot of pressure at that stage, okay? Whereas, if you go, well, I'll tell you what, I'll take a little bit of my money, which already goes out on student loans, on paying the NHS pension scheme, and rent or soon-to-be mortgage, but putting some money aside for the longer term. The earlier you start it, the more time it's got to build up. You get to that point in your late 40s, early 50s, you might at that stage have a lump sum to pay off your mortgage, or you certainly would have a savings pot to pay your kids' education. Brilliant. And what if actually when you get to it, the kids don't go to private education or decide not to go to university? Oh dear, you've got a pot of money. Well, what are you going to do with that? It's not, there's no downside to having that plan. So having a think about short-term goals, medium-term goals, long-term goals, just give yourself that chance to think about what you want. That's the first step into actually being able to put a plan, a strategy, probably a better word, in place to actually achieve it.
Simon, I'm going to ask you. Yeah, I'm going to ask you a question, or ask you to answer the question that we asked Susanna the other day. This is a conversation that we were having, and I'm going to ask now. And we thought, well, we'll ask a question of Susanna that we've asked many people over the years, and that is very simply, what do you think your biggest financial asset is? And I'm sorry, Susanna, I'm going to stitch up here. You gave us what we would expect and what commonly people give as a response, which was, you thought about it for a while, it might be the house that I'm hoping to buy and things like that. Simon, what is our biggest financial asset?
Well, it's not just the house, is it? It's people will say, my pension scheme. There you go. That's the biggest one.
Pension scheme could be it, yeah.
No, it's the best question of all. Your biggest financial asset is your ability to earn money. And that by far is the biggest. The partners, I mean, and this is potentially from an earnings perspective, obviously hospital doctor service, particularly if you've got private, the figures can be a lot higher than the average. But go on, do the maths on the average, Graham.
So if you took a full-time, an 8-session GP partner, average earnings are somewhere between 100, 120,000 pound a year is what we would typically see. So for the sake of maths, keep it at 100,000. Imagine you were a partner between age 30 and age 60. In today's terms, you would earn £3 million worth of income for your family, for you and your family. That's your asset, is that earning potential. It's that buys the pension. It's that pays the mortgage. It's that buys the house. That does everything. The biggest asset and the most important asset to protect is your income, which is why we asked about the NHS sick pay, which is why Simon's mentioned, look, the sick pay is great in there. You've got full pay for 6 months. It starts to get a hit after 6 months because it drops to half. Most of us can't afford losing half of our income. But at the end of 12 months, it drops to zero. What do you do around that? Well, the great news is you can do things. You can you can do an insurance policy to top up your income at those phases. You might be very, very lucky and have a pot of money or other resources. But for most of us, it's using insurances to top up that will pay that if you need through to your planned retirement age. The key bit is there are things that you can do. You don't have to worry about it. Just put the plans in place. And the really, really good news is that for those of you who are in, as I say, early in your careers, it'll never be cheaper than it is now. Something that might cost you 20, 30 quid a month in 20 years' time might cost you 10 times that. So it will only be something, and if you've got guaranteed rates, it'll only ever effectively in real terms get cheaper and cheaper as your premiums stay the same and inflation takes effect. So yeah, just be aware that there are things that you can do, but that's partly part of you having your plan B.
And that's really absolutely true of your plan A. And I say from a hospital consultant with private, you're looking 350,000 earnings. That's a lot of money and can do amazing things for you and your family. So managing your strategy around that so that your money is layered and worked in such a way that it does achieve those goals is really important, so that you get the most out of the hard work that you do. Obviously, there's only so much you can do about the tax man and the amount he'll take out of it, but that just puts all the more emphasis on what you do with that. So if I was to sum up how you minimize your financial uncertainty, start with the stuff that really is really nice to think about, the things you want to happen, the things you don't want to happen. Okay, so looking after yourselves, looking after your family, having the lifestyle, having the career you want, the home you want, the lifestyle you want, and obviously kids are part of that. So, having all those thought through, and then sit down and go, well, how do I make that happen? What's my strategy? What am I doing about it already? Some of you may already be saving lots. Some of you may already have, some protection plans in place. I don't know. But the point is are they aligned to what you actually want to achieve? That's a great conversation to have, because after all, it's all about you and what you want to achieve. So I think that's the main ways you can minimize uncertainty.
And I just reiterate the point you've made a couple of times, because I think it's a great way of thinking about things. If you're not sure what you want to happen, think about what you want not to happen, what you don't want to happen. That's the thing. So I don't want to work to 60. So I don't want to work to 70. Well, that means I've got to retire earlier then, for example. Just make that point again.
And there are ways and means of making that happen.
Absolutely.
Theoretically, you could all retire at 40. You wouldn't be able to take your pension at that stage, but I think the financial decisions you'd have to make to put enough money away to make that happen mean you probably wouldn't be able to afford food or rent or mortgage or no one can afford electricity and petrol at the minute, can they? But it's about the decisions you make. You've got a lot of competing priorities, so prioritizing according to things you really want to happen or indeed don't want to happen. That's how you do that. So go on then. Let's. I'm conscious of time, so let's talk about top tips. So go on, Graham. What's your first top tip?
So for me, it's going back to something that I alluded to earlier, and about retirement and thinking long term, which is that with all of the pressures you've got in the early career, all the things we talked about, the obvious stuff, the stuff that's right in front of your face, don't ignore the longer term. Because it's, as I'm repeating what I've said already, it's decisions you make in the next couple of years that will really, really give you huge options down. And it ties in with that strategy stuff. If you don't want something to happen, you need to do something to prevent it happening. And that's often thinking, I don't want to be working when I'm 70. I need to do something about my planning now about that. So I think for me, it's don't let the long term slip. And don't think, well, I can't afford to do that now, I'll do it tomorrow. Because that will impact you down the line.
And I just want to back that up by just because again, this, you know, we're talking here about just some generally common sense sort of financial planning stuff, but let's link this back to the topic here.
Yeah.
Money worries can creep up on you very easily.
Yeah.
You can suddenly find yourself in a, how the hell am I going to deal with that? You know, it's, you know, we've had clients who've said, oh, I'm not interested in insurances or this, that, and the other. And then they fall off their bike or fall off their skis and hurt themselves and are out for a period of time. And then it's like, yeah, do you know what? I'm actually more interested because I'm perhaps not as invincible as I thought I was. Okay, right. Let's talk about how we can take that away, that worry away from you. And I guess that's the thing is as you alluded to earlier, it doesn't matter whether it's plan A or plan B. If there's something that's going to end up worrying you, there's something you can do about it early on. You don't have to worry about money ever. You just, you know, some people just don't. But if you're sort of person that is like, well, managing my money and managing the implications of that could be a stress I don't need, it doesn't have to be. You can do something about it. My first top tip would be avoid being a sheep. Be very wary, should I say, of doing what's trendy, doing what everyone else is doing. And you'll commonly get that people go, oh yeah, look, I'm doing some day trading. Great, might be just the right thing for you. Or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that. You are unique. In every single way, you are unique. And how you feel about your finances and your financial health is going to be different from anybody else you meet. All right. One of the key challenges is if you get yourself into a relationship, is actually combining those two things. That can be quite challenging. I always say have a joint account and have two separate accounts. Just saying. But be wary of trends, because you know, just because the fellow down the pub or the newspaper says you've got to be into this, doesn't actually mean anything. It's what's right for you. So what else have you got there, Graham?
I suppose my final one would be don't think you need to be the expert. And I'm really quite passionate about this one. I say I've worked with GPs and some senior medics over the last 17 years. And one of the traits that we find, and it's not just in the GP world, it's repeated with hospital doctors and dentists and others, that we deal with some brilliant people, really, really clever people. And one of the traits of clever people is that there's almost I should know that. I should be able to, I should understand that myself. And it's great that you do, and great that you try to, but don't think you have to know everything, and certainly don't think that it's down to you to find the answer, because sometimes you don't even know the questions to ask, and it's sometimes that you don't know what you don't know. So you find I was with a friend last week who is a retiring head teacher. He'll be retiring in the next year or two, and he has diligently looked at through his teacher's pension, which is very similar to the NHS pension. And I said, look, yeah, it's great what you've done that. Just go and talk to an advisor. Just go and sit down and spend some time with that advisor, because you'll be surprised that I almost guarantee you there'll be things you haven't even thought of. And even though you've done all that work, I said the very, very worst that you'll find out is that you found everything and you're spot on with everything. It'll cost you nothing more than a bit of your time. And that's another thing to say. Actually, getting advice, getting financial advice doesn't need to cost you money. So just be aware of that as well. So yeah, really, really make a point I'm quite passionate about is that don't feel you need to work things out for yourself. And I know, Simon, you said the other day, it's similar to patients coming to see doctors, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is I would always go to my GP first if I'm not feeling very well. But if the GP suggests I've got a heart problem that needs operating on, I don't want my GP to do that. I kind of want a specialist, kind of want a heart surgeon doing that. And I guess that's the analogy. For me,
Sorry, I'm going to say you also don't want the person not going to see the GP in the first place because they've looked on the internet and said, "Oh, actually, I should be all right."
Oh, well, that's one of my, again, that's one of my favourites is, and I'm sure you guys have already had enough of this, of when you see a patient and going, well, I Googled it and it says that this is what's wrong with me. And the same's absolutely true when it comes to your financial health. Talk to people who know rather than talk to Google about money. I think that's important. I also think that again, my final thing would be to reiterate what I said before: invest in yourself and act early. Okay, you can't go far wrong if you just spent even a relatively small amount of your time thinking about what you want and then acting upon it. I think that's the best way to get a really sound strategy for your money and for looking after what's important to you. And then that's going to be one thing that's not going to stress you out. I think that's really important. Okay, so again, conscious of time, and we did promise you we'd give you the opportunity for questions. But before we do that, let's just be really clear. And I will say, there are other people that are specialists in what we do. I think we're the largest with the greatest history in this. But if you want to sit down and talk to one of our guys, it costs you nothing to sit down and talk to us. And we are specialists. Go onto the website. Go and have a look and have a wander around. We've got some great tools on there and stuff. But sit down with someone, discuss the things that are unique to you. All right, and understand how your working life fits around that, the things that you get from the pension scheme, etc., how it all fits together, and then put a strategy in place.
And I think just to reiterate the point that it will cost you nothing other than a bit of your time, and invest a little bit of time in yourselves, as Simon said. Absolutely.
Okay, so enough of us. Let's see what questions you might have. Have there been any on the chat already, Susanna?
No, not yet. So now's your time if you have any questions.
Have we got a shy bunch?
Possibly. Has
anybody got anything they want to ask?
Equally, what I'll do, just while people are thinking of questions, which I'm sure will come in, is I'm just going to put my email address. And if there are any questions that you want me to pass on, I'd be more than happy to do that. So I'll just put my email address in the chat now.
What I will also, I'll ask you guys a question in terms of other topics relating to financial health, with a particular focus on obviously the mental health side of things, and doctors in distress. If you can think of any particular topics that you'd like us to come and provide more content on, etc., please let Susanna know. Absolutely, we would really like to help in any way we can to support you guys. When Susanna explained some of the statistics around the mental health and the suicide rate, etc., it shocked me. So anything we can do to help.
I'm not sure we're going to get any questions. So I think it's probably best to, oh no, here we go. Surinder, thank you. So is there any specific advice you would give to someone who has just resigned with a mind to return to the NHS in a few years, hopefully when training is a little bit more supportive?
Simon, you've been working with our next steps in the RCGP sort of early careers stuff and a little bit, haven't you? So any particular thoughts on that?
I think there's a load of questions around obviously the things that you mentioned, the training there, but things that will be a challenge for you when it comes to the financial side of things. Be aware that, yeah, absolutely, rejoining the NHS, if you've been away for more than 2 years, the clocks get reset, or more than a year, the clock gets reset as far as the sick pay entitlement's concerned. So it goes back to the very basic. As Graham said, you build up to, after 5 years, to 6 months full, 6 months half. So there will be an issue around benefits, and obviously anything that you can gain from the NHS pension scheme kind of goes on pause. But in terms of career-wise, you know, it all comes down to, as you say, the training element. If you can if you can find the support that you need and get back on track with that, if that's still, you know, you've got the passion to do it, then basically the clock just starts again as far as the money side of things is concerned.
In a second question, though, which is a great one, thank you for it. Do financial advisors advise on investment things like crypto or trading, etc., or broader? Answer the specific things about crypto and so that we wouldn't deal with that, but we do advise on investments. And I'll speak about Wesleyan as a group, as said in our early slide, an award-winning investment team, and the investment managers there are specialists at looking at the type of long-term returns. We have gone as a company, for example, exclusively down a sustainable investing path that we will expect to provide return over time. So the answer to the question is yes, financial advisors advise on investments, and it's something that you can do with Wesleyan. If you want specific things like advice on trading directly on the stock market or investing into crypto, that wouldn't generally be, certainly wouldn't be Wesleyan, it wouldn't be the financial advisor. That's a bit more specific. Simon, you're a bit more closer to the ground.
So this goes back to one of the things I said about trends and the risks, because the thing about crypto, there are some amazing returns to be made on crypto. My challenge back would be is how much of your money are you prepared to put at risk, because it is significantly risky. So if you've got some spare money and you want to have some fun, great. But if you're looking to build up a pot of money to bridge the gap between when you want to retire and say actual retirement, so you're looking to build up a significant amount of money, I don't know, it depends on your attitude to risk, but that would be, for me, different from you, but for a lot of people, that would be stress, because you're so open to market variations. And that's the thing, it's about understanding investing. You know, I reckon, and I'm going to use this analogy because Graham's here. I know nothing about horse racing, so I will never go betting with a lot of money. Okay. Graham, however, knows a lot about horse racing, and Cheltenham last week. How did you get on, Graham?
We had a winning week, but it's a rarity. Don't give that as an example.
But there you go. You see, that even then, and I guess what I'm trying to put across is when you look at any investing, only gamble that which you can afford to lose. Right? That's true about anything, but certainly that's true about your really high risk stuff like crypto and direct equity investment. But if you like that, do it. So this is what I'm trying to say about having a plan. If you're relying on that to deliver some big stuff for you, I think that's probably a plan that needs nuancing. If it's some fun, just enjoy it. But sit down and work out a strategy based upon actually having some levels of certainty so you can de-stress the journey.
Love this next question, which is what would we contribute towards? What would we advise contributing towards? Would it be the NHS pension or investing money into an index fund or compound interest? What would you choose? Now, I'll give you my thoughts, and my immediate thoughts are those are three things that do three different things, and I don't think it's a do one or another is my first part. So, for example, compound interest. Everybody should have emergency capital. Everybody should have short-term capital that should be accessible. And that is likely to be in a compound interest type fund. everybody should be thinking about doing some medium to longer term investments. Now, that might be to repay a mortgage, it might be towards long-term saving, it might be towards kids' education, university fees, whatever it might be. And that will tend to be investing capital into either an index fund or an investment fund. And the pension is for the next, the longer term, the end goal, that sort of option at the retirement when you can access that. But the other thing about the pension one is, we touched on it earlier. Don't forget, it's not just an investment. It's not just an investment fund to provide an income at a later date. It's not just an investment fund if you pay at a later date. It provides life cover. It provides ill health retirement benefits. And the other thing, again, I mentioned that I was talking pensions with my son, and he's joining a new company and want to know whether to join the pension scheme. I said, well, what are the contributions? And I can't remember the precise figures, but it was something like about a 6% staff contribution matched by his employer. So my straight question was, well, would you give up 6% of your income? Because your employer is giving you 6% if you join the pension scheme. They're putting that in your pension fund for you and things like that. So just those questions there. So my response, and I'll let you come in now. My response is those three options do three very, very different things.
Totally agree. One thing I would say that we often, because we do get challenged a lot around the NHS pension scheme, is it worth it? Let's be really clear, and I'm trying to avoid jargon, but the jargon bit is that the NHS pension scheme is what's known as an unfunded scheme. There is no pot of money. All right, that doesn't make it all of a sudden all very unsafe, because it's a legal thing. It's protected. But here's the thing: the amount of money you're asked to contribute into that pension scheme bears no resemblance to the benefits you'll get out. If you paid the same into a traditional investment or even a personal pension, you would not expect to get the same level of benefits back at the end of it, not without there being the most amazing and unprecedented market growth over that 30-year period. Okay, you get back, because what you get back, you're told up front, well, you earn the money and we'll pay you this much of it. Yeah, so it's really valuable. So even though there are penalties for retiring earlier than state retirement, you may well be much better off still taking the pension scheme, because the sheer speed at which you grow benefits relative to anything else other than crypto. But crypto comes with a risk. Remember, the NHS pension scheme pays you a guaranteed index-linked income for the rest of your life. To buy one of those these days with interest rates even as they are today, no, you're not going to be able to match that.
And I think we're going to have to make this our final question, as it's 28 minutes past. How are we paid if our advice is free? Okay. Really
so,
that's a good question.
Simon,
let me answer
Simon
that.
does all his work for free. No,
let me answer that. So let's just be really clear, all right, because there may be it's not quite a semantic difference. It costs you nothing to sit down and talk to us. We operate what's called a contingent charging basis. So you sit down with one of our specialists, and they provide you with advice. If you choose to take that advice, if it's related to protecting things, insurances, then the people who provide those insurances pay us a commission, all right? Not as individual, they pay the company and they pay us salaries, okay? Where it comes to anything involving investing, so personal pensions, ISAs, all that kind of stuff, the regulator, our regulator, who's not quite as bad as yours, but pretty bad, they insist that there is an explicit charge. So yes, we do charge a fee, a percentage fee, but only if you take the advice. So we still exist because our customers stay with us for the lifetime. And there's always something, and some years, some decades, there's nothing we can do other than we provide a bit of help and they don't do anything, but we're always there to help with people. So I hope that answers the questions. There are others out there that do charge fees just to sit down and talk to them. We're not on that basis, because we're that confident what we do provides value.
There's just one other question, Graham and Simon, I think we might have missed just quickly from Sophie, so just want to make sure it's answered. How exactly is the NHS pension affected by taking years out to locum?
Well, I was going to say, certainly within the GP world, if you're working as a locum GP, you're entitled to remain in the NHS pension scheme. You don't have to. You don't lose your right to be in the NHS pension scheme as a GP locum.
Provided, well, the only thing is, and there's ways around it. If your accountant says the best way for you to be a locum, be it locuming in the hospital side of things, the best way is to become a limited company. In most instances, you couldn't be in the pension scheme. However, if you're doing it on a self-employed basis, which isn't as tax efficient on the income to start with, you can.
Yeah.
What I would also say is that on rejoining the pension scheme, then there are mechanisms where you can boost your the accrual. So there's a thing called additional pension, which basically you can buy chunks of income for when you retire, up to about £6,500 of extra money, and you just pay for it now. It's a pay now, get it later kind of thing, like a savings plan in effect. So there are things you can do to improve the outcome and write off the years that you weren't paid.
I think that is a brilliant example of why getting specialist advice is there. Simon's closer to the ground, and that's why he's paid the big bucks.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you for your questions, and also thank you to Simon and Graham. Been really helpful, and I hope you guys have found it helpful too. You have my email, you have our contact details. We'll send out an evaluation form tomorrow as well, which would be really grateful if you could just fill in. It's only about 3 or 4 questions, but do keep in contact, and thank you very much.